Okay, friends, here we are to do our last couple of steps on this Greenway Court Theater project. We will do our overhead beams, so I'm going to just turn back on that CAD file. So we're going to add in this gabled situation. We'll use a really similar strategy to what we did on our desk project to create that shape. And then we will turn it into what's called a 2D, 3D symbol, and we'll talk a lot more about that in our next unit, but I just want to give you a little taste of that because that's how we're going to make it render correctly on our drawings. So we'll start by turning this back on. I'm going to create a new layer called overhead beams, and it's fine for it to sit up on top. In actuality, it probably wants to sit above soft goods and under lighting positions, right? We're going to make our 3D shape to trace this outline. So we're going to zoom in here, and I'm going to just pick up my rectangle tool and start tracing out all of these shapes. The height there is 7.5 inches, which I think is pretty close to what we'll see in terms of thickness. These might be 8 inches thick. Let's check. Yes, 8 inches. She remembered correctly. So I think we'll just trace all of this and then we'll extrude it 8 inches, right? So if you recall the last time we picked up our rectangle tool and to do this kind of a shape, you might want to use the angled, right? So whatever that says when you hover over it, the 3-point rotated mode, angled rectangles, right? In order to create those beam shapes. The other thing you may need to do is make sure that this bottom area is level. I think I did that before I started this video or the last time I recorded. So you may want to make sure that all of this is actually horizontal. It's going to make the rest of your stuff snap together better. And I'm just doing this really quickly, right? And I've got to switch to my other rectangle mode. And you'll see there's still some little discrepancies. I'm not super worried about those for the purposes of this adventure, right? And I'm also not bothering to clean up corners because instead of making this the way that it currently has all of the sort of angled connections, I'm just going to add all of these into one surface in order to make this happen for our project. So back to the rectangle tool, you can also use keyboard shortcut 4. To do that, and we want to just extend. So this is a little bit twitchy, right? Because that's there and this is here, and it does not all align perfectly, and it does not go all the way to the ground. So you just want to make sure that you're at least overlapping all of the relevant points. If it's not perfect, it's going to be fine for the purposes of this project. So I will extend to there and then snap into that spot, and I will start here and grab that point. Okay, so is it perfect? No, but they are all stacked on top of each other, and we're going to just go with that because when I add surface, when I add all of these together, modify, add surface, it just creates one gabled structure. Then I'm going to extrude it, and I'm going to extrude it that 8 inches we measured a minute ago. And then I'm going to shift around to my left-hand view, and rotate it up to vertical so that it'll work for that project. So we'll just pick it up here, we'll pick up our rotate tool, and we'll pop it up on its edge. So now we have, we have our thing, but it's not currently sitting on top of our theater, and it's not currently aligned with the wall, okay? So that'll be our next move, but first I want to do this thing I was telling you about 2D, 3D symbols. So right now in the top plan view, we're seeing sort of a representation of the wireframe view. We're seeing kind of all these different lines. What we actually want to see in our ground plan is just a dashed line indicating where the beam is overhead. So in order to accomplish that, I'm actually going to take this 3D object, I'm going to trace it using my rectangle tool. I'm going to change my pen from solid to line type, and then I'm choosing ISO 3 dashed spaced, which if it's not in your drawing already, it'll be down in that attributes folder under line types. So dashed space is the one I want, and I'm going to trace over that piece, okay? So now I see I have this like solid rectangle situation. I'm actually going to make that kind of grayed out because I want to be able to see through it somewhat, but I like having some like hover over mode to it for my later version of drafting. So I'm just going to gray that out a little bit. Then I'm going to select both things. So a 2D rectangle in the top plan view and then a 3D object below it or beneath it or assigned with it, right? And then I go to Modify, Create Symbol. And we're going to call this Overhead Beam. And it's going to be like, you already did that because I already did this and then I'm redoing the video. So I'm going to say, okay, I'd like you to use the same, well, I'll call it Overhead Beam 1. You can just call it Overhead Beam because you don't have one already in your drawing. And we're going to let it place it just in the folder. When I do that, I now have a dashed line rectangle for the top plan view. But when I switch to top view, I'm seeing the top of the thing, right? Or bottom view or whatever. When I am in a 3D mode, I'm seeing 3D, right? But when I go back to top plan view, I'm seeing this dashed line situation, which is what I would like to have happen, right? I want to see this dashed rectangle overhead any place where there is a beam or this sort of structural component. So now I'm going to come down here. I'm going to line her up. And then I'm going to pull this across. So once it's in place, when I hold shift, it'll stay, right? And I can now match up the width of it to the width of the room. And let's see if that's correct. Oh, nope, it wants to sit inside the room. No problem. I will move you to there. Again, I'm holding shift just so that I'm snapping inside of things. Let's see how that goes. Great, good enough. Okay, so that's our first beam. We're then going to come in and add an additional beam at each point where this is happening, right? To give us a guide, I can pick up my line tool, right? And I can snap here at this edge, go across. It's making this line type because that was what I did most recently. I'm going to turn that into a solid line and I'm going to make it green or something so that I remember to delete it after I've put in these things. So construction line bright green to help me remember. I'm going to do the same thing on each of my other beams so that we have a place to align our symbol to. And then you can either duplicate this symbol and then just match it up into that spot, or you can come up to your resource manager and you can find overhead beam. Where is it? 45 items, but where are they all? Overhead? Yeah, overhead beam, in this case, overhead beam 1. So now I have this symbol. My cursor is at the center of it, so it's not going to exactly snap where I want it to. But if I kind of go like that, I can then move it where it goes. I will probably just duplicate each time. You can change the insertion point for a symbol, but it doesn't always do exactly what you want. All right, so we're going to just snap that beam in there. Duplicate again and snap this beam in here. Okay, so now I have all of these overhead beams, but I still have a problem, and that is that they're in the middle of my business. So I'm going to just move my overhead beams layer up vertically to whatever the top of this wall is. So if I'm in my front view and I change from shaded to hidden line just so that I can see all of my lines, I can either Command M and move them up, or I can move the whole overhead beams layer up, and that's what I'll probably do in this case. So I'm going to just measure what the height from the floor is. Boy, can I not see that. I wonder why. There it is. 12 foot 1.5 inches. Okay, I'll delete that because I don't actually need that. I just need to have the information. And then I can edit my overhead beams and give it an elevation of 12 foot 1. And now those are sitting up above. Is that what it looks like in the plan view? Don't remember. It looks like it's actually sitting right inside of that. So we'll go back into our front view and we'll subtract those 8 inches of the thickness of the thing. That was so clear, right? So 12 foot 1 minus 8 inches would be, let's see if it'll do it. Probably not. Let's see if that fixed it, or if I need to go in and do another thing. Nope, that fixed it. Great. Okay, so now I have overhead beams and chairs and risers and railings. What a beautiful plan. Okay, cool. So next step is going to be to create a plan and a section view of this drawing. So I'm going to go back into Command 5, my top plan view. I'm going to turn off the Greenway Court thing. I'm going to clean up any other stuff that's like weird, like I still see a direction line there I don't need. Cool. And then in this overhead beams thing, I just left all these green lines. That's weird. I will swipe the center line and plaster line. I think that is worth doing. So I'm going to come back in here and I'll just select those 2 lines, translate them over by moving them into theater floor plan, and then I'll change their color from bright green to something else. You can just be dark gray, like a normal. Like a normal, whatever. What did I say? Dark gray? Something like that. Right. So now those are there. So we have a center line and a plaster line in our project, and then I can turn off the drawing that we traced. Oh, that's beautiful. What a nice thing, right? You can see the sort of shadow of those overhead beams, and that's exactly what we would want to see. And when we do the lighting project, you'll come back in and add lighting positions, and they will have their own layer in a similar way. The other place where it's a little bit confusing is right here, this riser. So if you wanted to turn this riser into a 2D, 3D symbol by creating a rectangle that sits on top of the 3D element, that would be a good way to resolve that sort of lack of clarity about what's happening with those steps right there. So that might be worth doing if you have lots of copious free time, which I don't expect you do. So we're going to go ahead and move forward and create some viewports and put this thing on some sheet layers. I'm going to delete that because I don't need it. I'm going to go into View, Create Viewport, and we're going to create a ground plan viewport on the first sheet. We'll call it Ground Plan. You like my song? I'm going to just say OK and see how it fits on the page. So this is fine. I can make this, however, a little bit bigger, and I think, or at least the 3/8, right, will fit on this sheet as well. I can leave it this way if I want to, or I can rotate it 90 degrees if that's going to fit better for me. I'll probably just leave it this way for now. And then I want to create a section view, and in oldie-timey drafting, that would be a very annoying step where you would have to go in and trace everything and transform it into a section view. We live in the future, and so we can do this thing called Create Section Viewport. If you have your viewport selected, then you can trace your center line with this tool, and now that I've clicked on both ends of it, it's looking for a direction to look in. And so I'm going to look this way, double-click, and now I have this section viewport. You'll see there's even a marker for A/1, right? It's going to go on the second sheet, which is the section, and we're going to call it Section View, and then that will pop over onto the next page. So when I hit OK, I now have this section view. There's some stuff that's weird, so I don't know exactly what I'm looking at on the ground here. It may be that I left a line somewhere, or that something is turned on that I don't need to see, so I can go back in and tweak that in a moment. But the other thing that I'm seeing right now is all of these beams are dark solid black, and that's actually not our standard for drafting. So instead of making cut-through items this solid black color, we actually want them to have those diagonal hash lines the way that our exterior walls do on our ground plan view. So in order to change that, you're actually going to change the class line style or fill style. So in your classes, once you've created a section viewport, you're going to see section style as one of the classes that appears, and you can right click on that and hit edit. It'll open up this section, Style Graphic Attributes. You'll want to make sure this Use at Creation box is checked because then it'll change everything to whatever we make this change to right now. Switch to Hatch. Hopefully that cast iron hatch will pop up again. And then that will be our overall section style fill. And now this looks more like a regular theater. So that's great. Maybe we can just hit update and it'll clean up our drawing. Okay, so I don't love this line and I'm not sure what it is. It might be like a center line or something. So let's edit and go into the design layer and see if I can figure out what it is. It truly might just be those center lines that we just created. Let's go into plan view and see if force select. Yeah. So those are my most likely problem child. I'm gonna just change their class from none to, I don't know, I'm gonna put them in label. New class, and this is going to be center line. That way, when I return to the viewport, I can try turning off that center line class and see if that helps us. Oh, it did. It turned it off because I just made it, right? Okay, so that was what they were. Those two lines were our center line and plaster line. So what I did to remove them from this section view was I created a new class. I moved them into that class, and that class is not represented in this viewport. If you want to change what classes you're seeing, you can just come in here and change layers and classes in your object info. Okay, but in any case, we have a section view right now. We have our plan view on our first layer. We have a section view on the second layer. That's actually good enough for us to export this file. If you want to add additional information, you're welcome to do so. If you're like, I've done enough. You'll just come in, update your title blocks the way that we've been updating our title blocks for everything, and then you'll export these two sheets. The way we're going to do this now, because this is our assignment, the first assignment where we have two sheets for our export, is we're going to use the export mode called Publish. So if you go into File, Export, nope, you go into Publish, which is after export. It will let you print multiple sheet layers or save views, and that's what we want. So yours will probably look like this. When you open it for the first time, and over here you'll say, I'd like to print my ground plan and my section. You'll just hit that little arrow to move them across into the set to publish. It's going to ask you if you want to save this as a saved set. You don't need to do that. I usually don't do that. And then it's going to be Bartenstein Greenway Port, and this will create one combined PDF that includes all of those components, right? So this would be something I would put into my CAD folder with my other stuff. In here somewhere. Oh, look at all these theater conversions. Bartenstein Greenway Port save. Once it's done that, it will pop open usually as an Adobe Acrobat file so you can look at it and see how it worked out. Okay? So that is the export mode, and that's it for this project. We will submit this to the final assignment. You'll submit your PDF to the one that says PDF, and you'll submit your Vectorworks file, your complete Vectorworks file, to the other one, so that if I see weird things in your PDF, I can diagnose them in your Vectorworks file. And I can also make sure that you're in 3D like we're supposed to be. Great! That's it. Thank you.